The film opens with a couple, Miriam and Roy, whose conversation reveals that Roy does not treat Miriam well. We are then introduced to Yudu, a painter who has recently moved into a new house. Struggling with inspiration for his next painting, Yudu sits down to work but finds himself unable to decide what to create. As he gazes out of his house, he notices Miriam outside, dressed in a striking red outfit, looking exceptionally beautiful. Captivated, he begins to follow her. Meanwhile, we see Roy meeting with a menacing money-lender named Aji. Roy had previously borrowed money from Aji to start a business but has failed to repay the loan. Desperate, he approaches Aji again to borrow more money, claiming he needs it to bribe someone for a tender. Aji, having heard about Miriam's beauty, makes a shocking proposition. He suggests Roy leave Miriam with him as collateral until the debt is repaid. Roy, outraged, refuses to pawn his wife. Infuriated by Roy's defiance, Aji forces him to sign an agreement stating that if the debt isn't settled soon, Aji can take drastic measures. Back to Miriam, she visits her father's grave, reminiscing about him. Unbeknownst to her, Yudu has followed her there and begins sketching her. Miriam notices and confronts him, asking what he's doing. Yudu explains that he's a painter and was drawing her portrait. Pleased by this, Miriam expresses her desire to commission a painting and offers to pay him. Yudu declines the payment, saying he only wants her to model for him. Miriam, hesitant, tells him she needs her husband's permission first. Upon learning Miriam is married, Yudu leaves. That night, when Roy returns home, Miriam asks for his permission to have a painting made of her father. Roy, already stressed about his financial troubles, dismisses the idea, citing their tight budget. However, when Miriam reveals that the painter is willing to work for free, Roy reluctantly agrees. Overjoyed, Miriam visits Yudu's house the next day and shares her vision, a painting of herself with her father. She hands Yudu a piece of her father's photograph to help him capture his likeness. Miriam also shares that her father was a kind man who respected women and taught her self-defense. Miriam begins visiting Yudu's house daily to sit for the painting. One day Roy calls home, but Miriam's maid answers, informing him that Miriam is at the painter's studio. Suspicious, Roy decides to head home, but before he can leave, Aji's men abduct him. The deadline for repaying Aji's loan has passed, and Roy still hasn't settled the debt. Aji confronts Roy, demanding to know when he'll repay the money. Roy calls his business partner, who informs him that their project has been cancelled due to an ongoing audit, and some associates have been jailed, leaving Roy unable to access funds. Aji, enraged, orders his men to cut off Roy's fingers. Desperate, Roy pleads with Aji, offering his expensive house, which is registered in Miriam's name, as collateral. He promises to convince Miriam to sell it to settle the debt. Aji agrees and lets Roy go. That night, Miriam, now at home, hangs the completed painting of her and her father on the wall, a tribute to his memory. Suddenly she discovers the severed head of her pet cat, Leo, and panics, wondering who could have done such a horrific act. Hearing Miriam's screams, Yudu rushes to her side to comfort her. She urges him to leave as Roy is due home soon, and Yudu complies. When Roy arrives, Miriam recounts the chilling incident. Roy, manipulative and desperate, warns her that if their cat's head was cut off today, her life could be next. He insists they must sell the house to pay off his debts and escape Aji's threats. Miriam, emotionally attached to the house as her father's last memento, refuses. Roy, furious, accuses her of having an affair with Yudu and storms out. Later he calls Aji and shares his frustrations. Aji suggests that if Miriam were to die, the property would automatically transfer to Roy, allowing him to sell it and settle the debt. Liking the idea, Roy conspires with Aji to frame Yudu for Miriam's murder. That night, Aji's men kidnap both Miriam and Yudu. Meanwhile, Roy reflects on his past with Miriam, recalling happier times they spent together. Overwhelmed with guilt, he realizes his plan is wrong and tries to call Aji to stop it, but it's too late. Aji, a ruthless man, hands Miriam over to his men, who assault her. Fueled by rage and her self-defense training, Miriam fights back, killing her attackers and escaping. Yudu, also managing to free himself, rushes to save her but is stabbed in the stomach by Aji's men, leaving him gravely injured. Miriam reaches a bridge where she flags down a car for help, only to discover it belongs to Aji and his men. They stab her and throw her into the river, believing she's dead. Yudu, witnessing the attack, goes to the police and reports everything. The next day the police investigate but find no trace of Miriam's body. When questioned, Roy shifts all blame onto Yudu. That night as Roy sleeps, he's startled awake by the sound of a cat. To his horror, he sees Leo, the cat he believed was dead, standing before him, followed by the sight of Miriam's severed head on the table. Terrified, he wakes up, realizing it was a nightmare. These haunting dreams plague him for nights, as rumors spread that Miriam's spirit is haunting the bridge, seeking revenge. Miriam's ghost appears, luring one of Aji's men to the bridge and killing him in her true terrifying form. She continues her vengeance, eliminating Aji's men one by one. Yudu, meanwhile, is tormented by nightmares of Miriam's ghost trying to kill him. The next morning, two of Aji's men are found dead, hanging from the bridge. Villagers, convinced it's Miriam's spirit, spread tales of her vengeance. A local man explains to Yudu that a murdered soul becomes powerful and seeks retribution against its killers. Yudu, however, refuses to believe Miriam, a kind woman, could commit such acts. Miriam's spirit arrives at Aji's hideout, killing another of his men. The last surviving henchman, terrified, tries to flee, but Miriam's ghost decapitates him. Aji, now alone and realizing his life is in danger, seeks refuge at Yudu's house, begging to be taken in. Yudu, learning from Aji that Roy orchestrated Miriam's murder, locks Aji in a room and confronts Roy. Roy dismisses the accusations, claiming they're old news. Enraged, Yudu calls Roy a vile man who hired thugs to assault and kill his wife. Roy, sensing Yudu might expose him to the police, creates a scene, throwing objects and shouting to attract neighbors, pretending Yudu is attacking him. Neighbors rush in, apprehending Yudu. He tries to explain that Roy is responsible for Miriam's death and claims to have proof at his house, where Aji is locked up. However, when they arrive, they find the door open and Aji dead inside. The neighbors suspect Yudu of the murder, but he argues that if he were guilty, he wouldn't have brought them there. Unconvinced, they try to restrain him, but Yudu escapes. The next day, the police provide Roy with protection, fearing Yudu might attack again. That night, Miriam's ghost haunts Roy, driving him to flee his house in terror. Outside, he's captured by men working for Khotan, Aji's boss, who demands Roy repay Aji's debt, threatening to kill his family if he doesn't comply. Desperate, Roy hires a shaman to perform a ritual at the bridge to banish Miriam's spirit. As the shaman chants, Miriam's ghost appears, unaffected by the spells. Terrified, the shaman flees. Miriam's spirit kills Khotan's man and pursues Roy, who begs for forgiveness. At that moment, Yudu arrives and reveals a shocking truth. Miriam is alive. After being thrown into the river, she survived, thanks to her father's training as a Special Forces commander, which equipped her with survival and self-defense skills. She sought refuge in a remote cabin, where she treated her injuries and planned her revenge. Pretending to be a ghost, she terrorized and killed those who wronged her. Roy, stunned, confesses he suspected an affair between Miriam and Yudu, which fueled his rage and led to the murder plot. He admits he tried to cancel it but was too late. Yudu clarifies that he and Miriam were never romantically involved, only sharing mutual respect. Roy, remorseful, begs Miriam for forgiveness, claiming he deserves punishment and offering his life. Moved, Miriam drops her knife and embraces him. Roy vows never to let her go again. Suddenly, one of Khotan's men attacks Yudu, wounding him. Miriam kills the attacker, but Roy seizes the moment, stabbing her. Whispering that he loves her but must save his family, he delivers a fatal blow. Yudu, in a fit of rage, crushes Roy's head with a rock, killing him instantly. He rushes to Miriam, promising to protect her, but she dies in his arms. Heartbroken, Yudu lets her body drift down the river and surrenders to the police, who charge him with all the murders, leading to his imprisonment. Days later, Khotan visits Miriam's house, intending to seize it. There, Miriam's true ghost appears, killing him. The film ends with Aji's ghost haunting the bridge, concluding the story. This is a gripping revenge tale centered on Miriam, a beautiful woman mistreated by her husband Roy. Yudu, a painter, falls in love with her but respects her loyalty to Roy. Drowning in debt, Roy plots to kill both Miriam and Yudu, but Miriam survives, using her skills to exact revenge on her attackers. In the end, Roy kills her, only to be killed by Yudu, who takes the fall for the murders. Miriam's spirit, now truly a ghost, delivers final justice. This intense narrative blends betrayal, survival, and supernatural vengeance.